Hey, what is up, mortals? Welcome to Part 6, Season 3 of What If Deku Had Venom. A mass of black energy formed in the shape of a whip. It wrapped around Shigaraki's arms. The man was surprised to see this seemingly appear from out of nowhere. Not only that, but the fact that it was actually incredibly strong was another shocker. He tried to break free of the restraint as he did back at Kamino with Kamui Woods. But whatever this black whip was made up out of appeared to be a much stronger material than what he was used to. Suddenly, several more appeared, which all wrapped around Shigaraki's body. Mirio slammed Shigaraki's body into the walls multiple times before he threw him up to the ceiling. He wasn't over from there though. He somehow managed to jump high enough to reach Shigaraki and punch him with 50% of one for all. The force was enough to send Shigaraki crashing back down to the ground and cause a crater to form. Shigaraki giggled though, as soon as his restraints vanished. He immediately picked himself up and popped his shoulder back into place. You know, that tickled. Good for you. Shigaraki threw up a thumbs up sign. Mocking Mirio, Shigaraki smiled devilishly at Lemillion. A man in all black and plague mask tried to shoot at Mirio, but the boy was able to easily phase through the bullets that were fired at him. He empowered himself with more of one for all before he got into a strange position. He had his arms behind him, but his hands were open. He leaned back for a second before he threw them forward. Thunderclap, Mirio roared. A huge shockwave was released from Mirio's clap. It was enough to send the villains in hiding flying. Shigaraki struggled to hold his ground, but he managed. What really set Mirio off was the fact Shigaraki just kept smiling the whole time. What was with him? Mirio used his Phantom Menace move in order to phase through the walls and struck down the weaker of his opponents. Once they were done, he tried to backhand Shigaraki, but the man grabbed his arm. He winced in pain and looked at what was happening to it. Shigaraki's quirk was active. He cursed himself for not taking that into account. He used his other arm in order to punch Shigaraki with 65% of one for all. Shigaraki tried to block the punch with his hand, but it didn't work as Mirio simply phased his fist through the hand and sucker punched Shigaraki. This knocked Shigaraki down, but only for a moment. Mirio was beginning to pant. He wasn't used to using more than 50% of one for all. He was starting to push his limit. As a matter of fact, it already felt like his arm was slightly fractured. But he couldn't stop now. He looked to see the condition of his other arm, but what he saw immediately alarmed him. The decay. It was spreading. How? Mirio looked down at Shigaraki and growled. Shigaraki couldn't help but laugh though. You should see yourself now. What are you gonna do now, Lemillion? Can't be a hero if you're dead. Can you? Maybe if you sacrifice that arm, you can still have a chance at being something in this society. Mirio stared daggers at Shigaraki, but he howled in pain as the decay was spreading further. Shigaraki was right. If he didn't do something soon, the decay would spread even further along his body. Shigaraki was laughing hysterically and slamming his hand on the ground. Mirio didn't understand what this mentally ill man was doing until he saw the ground evaporate. He jumped high up and used his black whip to attach to the ceiling. Unfortunately, it didn't work, but he found out something else. He could apparently float. This was the second quirk All Might told him about a while back before his untimely passing. Oh yeah, that's right. He had even more reason to defeat Shigaraki now. For All Might. This is for All Might. Mirio grabbed Shigaraki using his black whip abilities and yanked him off the ground. He grabbed Shigaraki by the throat. There's an old saying in America: an eye for an eye, an arm for an arm, a life for a life. Shigaraki was tugging at his restraint. He looked desperate to get it off of him. All for one took away my master's life. Wouldn't you say it's fair to do the same to his successor? Mirio was in tears now. He was letting his emotions get the best of him. Shigaraki, in desperation, shot a spear at Mirio's arm, the one that was decaying. Mirio screamed in agony. He tried to pull the spear out of his arm, but Shigaraki shot several more spikes at Mirio. The boy phased through all of them, but it wasn't the same for his decaying arm. It wasn't acting in accordance with his quirk at all. What did you do? Mirio cried out. Tamura ignored Mirio's question and faced the unconscious men before him. He smiled even wider than before as he unlatched his jaw. What Mirio saw made him want to puke. He witnessed carnage consume the Yakuza members one by one and increase in stature. Shigaraki laughed demonically as he continued to grow in size. But there was something else off about this situation. Red pieces of sludge attached to Shigaraki that varied in size. Once Shigaraki's transformation was complete, he was huge, too big to fit in the building. He looked down at Lemillion with an insane look in their eyes. Now, how would you like for me to end you today? Mirio was petrified. This was the worst situation he could ever be in right now. He could only wish upon a star for reinforcements. Wishes have come true before though. The wall crashed open to reveal the symbiote squad. Izuku with Venom and those strange red wings. Tsuyu with Lasher. Uraraka with Payback. Night Eye with Toxin and Kirishima with He may have gotten caught up with a fight, but still though, 4 was better than none. Shigaraki stretched out his hand towards Mirio. He was in the position to grab the third year. But something wet wrapped around Mirio's waist. The boy's eyes widened for a second when he was yanked away from Shigaraki's grasp. He looked down to see that it was the tongue of Tsuyu. He thanked the aquatic girl for the save, but he immediately clutched his arm in pain. Yikes, what happened? Mirio forced out. He pointed towards the gigantified version of Shigaraki. Well, at this point it was no longer Shigaraki. This was completely Carnage. He looked down at his arm, then at the students. Cut it. What? I want you to cut off my arm before it spreads too far throughout my body. Tsuyu looked at Mirio's slowly disintegrating arm. It was already at his elbow. She was too nervous and squirmish to do it though. Night Eye looked at Mirio's arm. Sleeper covered Night Eye's body and formed one of their arms into a blade. I'm sorry we had to resort to this, Mirio, even though Night Eye's face was covered. The voice crack was enough to tell the inner turmoil Night Eye was going through right now. Not only that, but everyone could tell there were tears that ran down Night Eye's face. Night Eye still went through with it though. But he tried to ease Mirio's pain during the process. Sleeper had quite a unique ability, which was chemokinesis. In other words, Sleeper had the ability to produce liquid and aerosol chemicals which had several effects. They formed a sort of drug to numb the pain he would feel when his arm would be cut off, while Night Eye was taking care of Mirio. The others were doing damage control to the highest extent. Tsuyu tried to put her best foot forward, but Carnage swatted her away. Uraraka couldn't even summon her symbiote for some reason, so she was of no help either. Izuku was the only one who could do anything here. He was tired though. He couldn't fight Carnage on his own even if he was at 100%. He was at an incredibly big disadvantage here. He tried to fly, but he was too sloppy at it. He kept blacking out seconds at a time. He tried to use the erasure ability he gained from Aizawa, but he couldn't keep his eyes open for long enough. Uraraka and Tsuyu were relentless in their attempts against Carnage. Tsuyu began to read Carnage's movements a bit better throughout the fight, and thanks to her amplified agility, she was able to avoid quite a few of his attacks. That was about all she could do though, as her attacks weren't all that effective against the man. Uraraka was just getting in the way at this point. Izuku realized this and grabbed her by the arm before she could get back into the fight and hurt herself even more. She looked at Izuku with cold eyes. Let go. She tried to muster enough strength in order to pull herself away from Izuku, but the boy's grip on her was too strong. He wasn't budging. No, Uraraka, I'm not going to allow you to get yourself killed. At least with Tsuyu she can actively use her symbiote, but you haven't shown any signs of being able to use yours. Will you shut up already? You don't have the right to be lecturing me after lying to my face for so long now, Uraraka yelled. She completely snapped at Izuku and found enough strength to break free of Izuku's iron grip. Izuku moved quickly though and pinned her to the wall. Venom uncovered his face so Uraraka would look straight into Deku's eyes. His eyes were dead serious. They were piercing red now. This left Uraraka completely paralyzed in fear. She was never made aware of Venom's bonding process with Eraserhead and Rukyu. This power Izuku was displaying right now, she had no idea what it was. Well, what's this ability? Izuku leaned forward. His glare intensified. Ochako was starting to break a sweat. She didn't know what was going on. Izuku blinked his eyes a couple times and his eyes went back to normal. He sighed and grabbed Ochako by the shoulders. Listen to me, Uraraka. All my life I was mocked for being quirkless, for being different. Everyone saw me as below them because of something I couldn't control. That fateful day Venom bonded with me, it changed everything. I could finally fit in. But why? Why couldn't you trust us? Why did you keep your symbiote a secret for so long and waited for someone else to spill the beans? Because I didn't know how you guys would react. I've had trust issues for over a decade now. I know that it wasn't right for keeping this a secret for so long, but I was afraid to lose everyone. You especially. What? Before we get back into the story, I would like to say that we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes over the hard facts of the anime presented. Now, in case you guys didn't know, we have a third channel called We The Celestial Naruto What If. We The Celestial Naruto What If mainly focuses on our Naruto What If series. If you are interested in content like this, please go check the description below or click the eye icon in the top right corner. Now with that out of the way, let's get back into the story. Uraraka, you were the first friend I made in years. The first person to accept me for all my flaws. Well, human friend anyways, and I see you as more than just a friend, Uraraka. Uraraka blushed as soon as she realized the implications of Deku's statement. All the bottled up emotions were coming out at once. There was also another reason, and that was because Venom was being experimented on. I wish I told more people I trusted earlier, because we probably could have prevented this mess from happening. Uraraka began to tear up as a purplish sort of sludge surrounded her. when it completely enveloped Ochako. The symbiote's full appearance was finally revealed to have a sleek look to it, different from the other symbiotes with a more technological look to it. Deku smiled as Ochako looked at her new appearance, ready to kick some butt. Izuku asked. Ochako cracked her knuckles and gave an affirmative nod. You betcha. Uraraka leaped towards Carnage. But she wasn't prepared for the physical boost. She yelped in surprise but quickly adjusted herself. She tried to shoot some webs at Shigaraki. But something else came out instead. Her body released several voltages of electricity. Carnage screamed in pain and swung their arm at Ochako. Tsuyu used Lasher's tendrils to grab his arm though and pulled it down for a couple seconds. Deku leaped into action as well and flew towards Carnage. Deku was fighting off the slumber in his eyes the best he could. Venom was working on overdrive in order to manipulate the body enough to not end up crashing immediately from Izuku's constant blackouts. He was pumping stimulants into Izuku's brain to keep the boy awake long enough in order to speak to Ochako. After all, he was the best wingman ever and she needed to be able to use her symbiote in some form or fashion. Adrenaline wasn't working, so he decided to go another route with her. Deku, pumped up with adrenaline, activated Aizawa's quirk. He knew he wouldn't be able to hold it for long, but every second was worth it. Carnage screamed as they could feel their bond being forcefully separated by Izuku. They let out a monstrous roar as they tried to swing at Izuku. But Tsuyu, with the help of Lasher, was able to wrap Carnage's arm in their tendrils and tongue. Several more tendrils came out of Lasher's body though. They grabbed onto the rest of Carnage's limbs. They were putting in everything just to restrain the behemoth. Thankfully, less of Carnage was beginning to show. Some parts of Shigaraki's body began to show. Uraraka used the opportunity to speed up the process of removing Carnage from Shigaraki by using her electrical ability to shock him. Shigaraki screeched in pain and started swinging violently. Deku continued to keep his distance from Shigaraki, but he was struggling to keep his eyes open. He was squinting at this point. He closed one of his eyes and forced one to stay open. He could see that Uraraka wasn't holding back on Shigaraki. She was relentless in using her electricity to hold Carnage down. He knew he couldn't hold his eye open for much longer, and he remembered about his bioelectrokinesis as well. He took a leap of faith and flew in towards Shigaraki. He deactivated Aizawa's quirk and used his electricity to help further suppress Shigaraki. A green and black wolf, presumably Sleeper, charged in and shot a strange yellow liquid at Shigaraki, which caused a large explosion. Deku, Ochako, Tsuyu, and Sleeper all leaped back from the explosion that just took place. There was a lot of smoke from the explosion just now. They waved away the dust and saw a silhouette of what they could only believe to be Shigaraki without his symbiote power-ups. Once the dust cleared up, what was revealed was a husk. Shigaraki's skin was completely dried out and gray. His mouth was wide open and he was looking up to the sky. Before they could relax though, they were immediately put back on guard when his mouth started to move. Curse, Hero Society. Red spikes shot out of Shigaraki's body. Deku was able to dodge the attacks, but Mirio and Night Eye weren't so lucky. A large spike impaled itself into Night Eye's abdomen and another spike shot its way through Mirio's eye. Mirio screamed in pain and was bleeding at an alarming rate. Izuku was wide awake in shock now. He was fueled by pure, unadulterated rage right now. He charged at Shigaraki at such a fast pace that he was a blur to everyone in the vicinity. Deku punched Shigaraki in the chest, but he used too much strength in the punch. His arm went right through Shigaraki's chest and his lightning was as intense as ever. Carnage wouldn't be able to come out even if it wanted to. Deku didn't care though. He was angry. Shigaraki just killed two of his comrades in one fell swoop. He looked at the almost lifeless eyes of Shigaraki. There was glee in the man's eyes. He couldn't stand to look at the man's face. He didn't deserve to live anymore, and there was a chance that even after this he could survive. He wanted to make sure the man paid with his life. He bashed Shigaraki into the wall multiple times before he cracked open the man-child's head and began to feast on it. He took a step back when he realized what he had just done. His hands shook in fear. He looked at them. Blood stained his hands. He just ended a man's life. Not just that, but in the worst way imaginable. He ate them. He was having a mental breakdown now. What he had done was not only unbecoming of a hero, but more befitting of a devil. Was he really a monster before he could even finish his thinking pattern? He felt two arms wrap around his waist and a head rest itself on his back. It's going to be all right, Izuku. Just let it all out. You don't have to carry your burdens anymore. We're here for you. Izuku cried. He cried like he'd never done before. He let it all out finally, knowing that he didn't have to fight alone anymore. Knowing that there were more people besides Venom out there to look out for him. He could finally be at peace with himself for once, and with that, he slept. Thank you all for watching the video to the end. Now there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. On behalf of We The Celestials, I'd like to thank the writer for this video, as well as the editors for this video. Their details will be in the description. If you're a voice actor, editor or writer, or you're interested in becoming one of those, go to the Discord that is in the description of this video and hit up the head of one of those areas. We're always looking for members to join us. That's it from us for today's video. So thank you all for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're interested, and hit that like button if you liked the video. Until next time, peace out mortals, have an amazing day.